Game Master's Guide. I'm your host, Jonathan Albin, and as a game master with 50 years of experience, I have some information I'd love to share with you that will make your games great. Today we're going to be talking about something that's hypercritical and often overlooked. When we are running a role-playing game, particularly when we're engaging in a developing scene, we need to create a feeling of the location and an understanding of all of the parameters so that the action for the scene can move forward without a lot of starts and stops. We call this the establishing shot, and today we're going to be going over 10 different ways of looking at that establishing shot to make sure that we cover all of our bases. Before we do that, make sure you go down below and click all the buttons to let the algorithm know you're part of our audience, and let's get going.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame, our strength in numbers is a roll of the dice.
In the times that I've talked about establishing shots before, I might have been a little ambiguous or made it a little confusing. The idea of the establishing shot is, as it's described in screenplays and such, the exterior picture of the scene so that the participants and the viewers don't get confused on where you are within the story. In essence, it is the jumping off point for the action of that scene. And so today we're going to be talking about the various elements that go into considering what makes up that starting point. So we're really talking about how do we get the story to step off on the right foot so that everyone playing is engaged in the scene and understands the impetus, the motivation, and the mechanics of that location so that they can actually act inside of that space. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the very concept of the story theme that you are developing. If it's a horror film, of course, it's going to be dark and mysterious. If it's a mystery, there's going to be a lot going on and a lot of potential clues built into the scene. And we're also going to be talking about the ambiance of it. Is it a situation where the players are absolutely confident, or is there fear lurking behind their eyes? By utilizing critical terminology that carries forward your theme, you're building in the experiential location. So it's not just the what and where of the action, but what that location portends. So, for example, if you are referring to a cosmic horror, perhaps you are in an ancient ruin. And I could sit and go over every possible option, but the point here is that you want to build into not only your vocabulary for the adventure, but also in the description of this incidental starting point, this establishing shot, the idea that you are in that place from the beginning and immerse the players in it throughout. Of course, there will be conditions placed on it. If it is if it's weather and a storm, perhaps that's going to play into it. If it's particularly hot or cold, the idea is you're going to be putting into place those issues of ambiguity that you want the players to work off of, but you're also building in the mechanical pluses or minuses that might become happenstance within the game. And by building out this conditional guide in advance in the establishment, you're giving the players the capacity to actually take those arguably dangerous facilities and make them work for the adventurers, so they can actually start to build a pattern and a plan for what they're going to do within the scene. These conditions don't necessarily have to be static. They can change over the course of the encounter, so be aware that you are setting up the conditions at the moment of the beginning of the engagement, and as you move through the various stages of the scene, you can adapt and adjust them. Additionally, the players are going to want to know how much ammunition they have, what the layout is, whether there's any props or resources in the scene that are adaptable and acceptable to use. And by giving them the freedom to embellish or amplify, you're actually building out a richer description of that scene. So in those precursor moments, let the players also provide you updates on what they have with them, so that you have a richer understanding of what all is possible within the scene. Additionally, if this scene is occurring in the sequence of an adventure, for example, you may have cliffhangered the last scene, and so therefore they are starting the action with perhaps some injuries, some limitations. For example, perhaps they left their rope at the other side of the room. By verifying this information and sharing it with the players, and even asking them perhaps what they perceive to be their hang-ups and limitations, you're able to build out a depth of the scene so that the richness of it will come not only from your description but by their input as well. This therefore affords them the opportunity to adjust and adapt during the scene as well. Of course, cliffhangers work both ways, and a cliffhanger for the players may have actually set the circumstances in the scene up so that the villains or enemies that are present are perhaps unaware of the situation. And so giving the players some of these circumstances and drawing from them their remembrances of what's going on in the scene, you build out a functional three-dimensional space that they can engage with. And since you've given them the descriptions on where they are and what's going, what is the precursor scene, then they have the opportunity to make those changes on the fly. This includes, for example, perhaps they've been sitting within that moment for some period of time, and you can provide them additional clues, hints, and maybe some undisclosed cues that become apparent in that momentary awareness. Generally, the way this works mechanically is you provide them with a die roll against their skills in perception, perhaps, or they have some acumen in discovery, and you allow them to pick up some extra subtle items that may not have been there on your first narrative blush, and therefore you again are filling in the space so that the very air that they are breathing feels visceral. Of course, this also means you need to play off of, to a greater extent, not only what you remember of the scene coming in, but you allow the players remembrances. Perhaps they visited this location before and see some subtle nuances that weren't there before. The reason you want to work out all of these potentials is you want the players to really amplify the experience by playing off of what they recall, and therefore allow them to expand their awareness of the scene as you move forward. Of course, essential to that is going to be the ways to get in and out of that location, even those that might be potential, such as windows or other possible alcoves that may not have been explored before. Give them the opportunity to visualize those and where they are in reference to it so they can make their moves into those specific places. And ultimately, you'll have a very solid understanding of the, quote, getaway plan, if that is their intention, as compared to ensuring that no additional villains come into the encounter. And speaking of that, of course, you need to have a really clear understanding of what adversaries might be there, what their potential weaponry might be, whether or not they themselves have to worry about ammunition and resources, and their physical number, so that you can build up your countdown towards the end of the particular stage and or the final conclusion of the scene itself. This also means that you have to have a pretty defined conclusion in terms of what the villain's opportunities are and what they are there to do. Perhaps they are on a timing schedule, so they have to do something within a certain number of turns before they react, before they have to change. Again, the staging of the scene really does matter. And by having clear understandings of what these triggers might be, you give the players the opportunity to alter and adjust the scene. This is all, of course, happening in the instant before you begin the scene. So it's not necessarily foreknowledge, but it is an awareness of the prescience of the scene and what may or may not occur and how it might play out. Since it's mechanically adjusted by the die rolls in the mechanism, do realize that you as the Game Master control and adjust those numbers so that each stage will feel the gravity and the weight that it should feel in that moment. So with all of these different pieces playing on your mind, it's really important that you keep fairly decent notes of what the scene is going to be like. Perhaps describe it for yourself, create a list of these resources that the players can work off of, and kind of weave the story together in such a way that the players will have the same resources that you intend for them to have during the scene for its intensity and its value to be amplified. Now, of course, the question becomes, did I miss anything? If there's something that might have been useful to include in the establishment of your scene, what would that be? Leave your comments down below. It'd be great we would greatly appreciate having a conversation with you about those and to talk about what can improve the scenes further. Again, thank you for being here. I'm Jonathan Albin. This has been Game Masters Guild, and I hope to see you. Game Masters Guide. Wow, that's a slip. And I will see you in the next episode. Remember, we record 5 days a week, and I hope to see you soon. Go play.